Really means with South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. He is joining me right now. Senator, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So as Michelle was laying out, this is an important meeting, maybe the toughest job in the world that Rex Tillerson has right now as he arrives in Russia for these meetings tomorrow. What, from your perspective, should be the message that Secretary Tillerson takes to Russia?
That when you say Assad did not launch this chemical attack, you're wrong. We know he did. We hold you accountable for not disarming his chemical weapons cache as you promised. There's no doubt in my mind, Kate, that Russia aided and abetted this attack. They did not disarm Assad of his chemical weapons. This attack was launched from an airbase where there are Russian troops present. So just let the Russians know that we don't believe the lies you're telling, and we're never going to believe them.
You said aided and abetted, but do you have any reason to believe or any knowledge to any reason to believe that the Russians knew about the chemical attack beforehand?
I have every reason to believe that they intentionally left chemical weapons in the hands of Assad. It's impossible for me to believe that Russia operates at the same airbase where the chemical weapons were stored and the attack was launched from, and they had no knowledge of it. They're either incredibly incompetent or they're complicit. I believe they're complicit. They've attacked hospitals. One war criminal policing another will never work. And when Secretary Tillerson says he hopes that Russia will realign itself with Western democracies and break away from Syria and Iran, with all due respect, I like Secretary Tillerson. That's pretty naive. Russia's Putin's regime is very much aligned with Syria and Iran in the way they do business, and they're never going to break away until the cost of doing business is too high. And if you want Russia to abandon Assad, you got to create costs for Russia.
Well, but Senator, I mean, that's a major charge against Russia right now, because the senior administration officials, when asked that very question, if Russia had knowledge of the chemical attack beforehand, this is all that they have said, of course, on background. They say at this time, there's no U.S. intelligence community consensus that Russia had foreknowledge of the Syrian chemical attack. You say it's there?
Well, here's my belief. I believe that the Russians did not overlook the chemical weapons cache that exist in Syria today at that air base, that they're complicit with Assad. They want him to have an upper hand. They've been helping him stay in power by bombing hospitals, committing war crimes themselves. So
but do you think that they knew that Assad was going to take that step beforehand?
I don't know, but I find it hard to believe they didn't know he had chemical weapons. I find it hard to believe that they could be on the same airbase and have no knowledge of a chemical weapons cache on the base, and that they were going to eventually launch airplanes with chemical weapons. You know, when it comes to Russia, you quit having your head in the sand. Putin's a war criminal. Assad's a war criminal. They're birds of a feather, and if you want to break Russia away from Assad, make them pay a heavier price than they're paying today for backing them.
Even at this point after the strike, do you think the president's head is in the sand about Putin? No.
I think this strike was a game changer. There's a new sheriff in town. I hope North Korea is watching. Let me tell you this. If I were you, I would be real reluctant to take Trump on if I were an adversary of the United States. He's very unpredictable. I think he's subject to using military force when he thinks it's justified. I would not dally at all with Trump. So here's what I think is going to happen. I think Trump's going to get more realistic about Russia. We need to sanction them for what they did in our election, aiding and abetting a chemical attack. I hope we'll have safe havens for the opposition, members of the opposition, so they don't get barrel bombed in the future. You see a change in policy here. Sean Spicer said, don't use chemical weapons or barrel bombs. I hope that the president will expedite the demise of ISIL.
But then they walked that back. Then the White House put out a statement after the barrel bomb kind of addition, kind of moving the red line, which would be a huge escalation if barrel bombs were the red line now. They walked that back, saying there's no change in posture. I mean, that gets to what we've faced really since the strike by the United States. A lot of mixed messages coming from this White House on issues, especially like the issue of Assad. Should Assad stay? Should Assad go? You talk to Nikki Haley. You talk to Rex Tillerson. You get two different answers. Do you understand what Trump's policy is toward Assad right now?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear after Sunday and today. What Tillerson said was very clear to me, that there is no place for Assad in Syria. The Syrian people won't accept him as their leader. He's slaughtered about 500,000. He's a puppet of the Iranians, so no Arab government in the region will accept him. It's impossible for Assad to stay in power in Syria. Now, how he goes, what I would suggest is that we declare a safe haven so the Syrian people can live without being barrel bombed and attacked by chemical weapons, that when we take ISIL down, which should be the #1 priority, is to destroy the caliphate, that we begin to train Free Syrian opposition members, well vetted. NATO, Arab countries begin to train the opposition so they can take Assad on and create a change in military power on the ground. That's how he gets pushed out. Russia's not going to fight for the death to the death for Assad.
Do you think barrel bombs should be the red line now?
Yes. I think I would ground the Syrian Air Force.
That's a huge
Here's what I
escalation,
tell
right?
President Trump.
You acknowledge that'd be a huge escalation,
Well,
right?
Yes, it's long overdue. Here's what I would tell President Trump. You did a great thing by enforcing the chemical weapons violation, but it's not about how you kill the babies. It's the fact that you're slaughtering innocent people through air power. If it were not for the Syrian Air Force, Russia and Iran working together, the opposition would have taken Assad down a long time ago. So my advice to President Trump is to tell Assad that your days of using the Syrian Air Force to indiscriminately bomb civilians and bomb the opposition's hospitals are over, that I would declare a safe zone, a safe haven, and tell the Russians, if you cross this line, the Assad Air Force, if you cross this line, you're going to be shot down. That would allow people in Europe from Syria to go back to Syria. The best thing we could do for Syria is to create a safe haven inside of Syria so that women are not raped and murdered and babies are not barrel bombed and chemically attacked. That safe haven, to me, is the key to going forward. And if this is one and done, I don't think we'll have accomplished the goal. We got to follow up.
Well, here's part of part of the issue here is we've heard from a lot of folks in the administration. There have been some mixed messages. The one person we have not heard is on specifically what is the United States policy towards Syria on these various issues is the president himself. Do you want to hear from the president more specifically, Senator? Do you think the American people are owed that?
Well, let me tell you, I'm proud of what the president did. By striking back against Assad for using chemical weapons, he's enforcing the treaty that Assad signed up to in 2013. But here's the test for this president. If they use the same air base, if they keep using the same air base and other air bases to indiscriminately kill civilians with barrel bombs and other conventional weapons, then we're never going to get Assad out of power. The only way Assad goes is when the Syrian people get some help from the Western world and the Arab nations that they border.
Right, but does the president need to lay that out?
Leads.
Does the president, do you want to hear the president speak publicly about what his specific position is towards Assad, what his specific position is towards if the barrel bombs are a red line now? Do you want to hear that publicly?
Yeah, what I want the president to do is connect Syria to American national security interests. It is in our national security interest that Assad not stay in power because he's a puppet of the Iranians. The Ayatollah is very much an enemy of the region and the United States. If you leave him in power, you're giving Damascus to Iran. He's a recruiting tool for al-Qaeda and ISIL. Sunni extremists would love Assad to be in power because they can recruit in perpetuity. I'd like the president to make the case that Assad has to go. It's in our national security interest that he go, that the caliphate, ISIL, has to be destroyed, and that we're going to accelerate the demise of ISIL. We're going to create safe havens for the Syrian people so they'll no longer be slaughtered in the future. We're going to help them rebuild their army, the Free Syrian Army, and they'll go after Assad, and that's how he leaves. Yeah, I want a policy that's real clear. Assad must go. You can no longer use the Syrian Air Force against the opposition without consequence, and that we're going to train the opposition aligned with Arab countries and NATO to create capacity.
Are you comfortable hearing that from
out.
Sean Spicer at the podium? Are you comfortable hearing that policy articulated in various degrees of clarity from the UN ambassador and the Secretary of State, or do you want to hear it from the president?
At the end of the day, the president's going to have to make the case for what I just said. What is the policy of the United States regarding Assad? I believe after the attack is pretty clear from Ambassador Haley and Secretary Tillerson, when you put the puzzle together, that the Trump administration believes Assad has to go. I think it's pretty clear they view the Russians differently. If you don't believe the Russians aided and abetted Assad, that's pretty naive. And here's what I would tell the president. It's not how the babies die. It's the fact that Assad is just slaughtering his own people. He's changed the military equation on the ground by using air power with the help of Russia and Iran. And if you want to reset Syria, you got to tell Russia and Iran you're no longer going to be able to help Assad kill the opposition without pushback.
One more question about Russia, since Secretary Tillerson is on the ground there. It's customary for President Putin to meet with secretaries of state, from the U.S. secretaries of state when they visit. As far as we know, that's not going to happen. Michelle Kosinski says they have not extended that invitation. To use your phraseology, your colorful phraseology from the weekend, is that an FU to the United States?
You know, I think he's trying to send that, but Putin's a weak figure when you look at it. He really is dominating his country by killing opposition. He's stolen his people blind. Yeah, by not meeting with Tillerson, he's trying to act tough, but it actually shows his weakness. The fact that he won't meet with Tillerson tells me that Trump did the right thing. And if Trump really wants to get Russia's attention, here's what you need to do.
How does it make the right thing? Don't you want to force Russia to the negotiating table? How is them not meeting after the strike mean he did the right thing?
It means that he sees our actions to be strong, not weak. Okay. He's saying, I'm not going to meet with you. He says that Assad did not commit this chemical attack. Trump says he did. Now, here's what Trump needs to tell Russia, Iran, and Assad. You're not going to use air power anymore to slaughter people in Syria. If you drop a barrel bomb, we're going to hit you again. We're going to establish safe havens. And here's what I think Russia would do. If they saw Assad begin to lose militarily, they would go to Geneva. What do they want in Syria? They want a presence. I don't mind Russia having a presence in Syria. I just don't want them to have a veto over what happens in Syria. I don't mind Iran having a say about Syria. I don't want them to run Damascus through Assad. The only way you're going to get Russia's attention and change the balance of power in Syria is for Russia to pay a price. I hope the president will embrace sanctions that I've introduced. I'm going to amend those sanctions to include a paragraph for Russia's aiding and abetting Assad's chemical attack. They either, through incompetence, didn't collect the chemical weapons, or they left some in the hands of Assad on purpose. I believe they did this on purpose. I believe they need to pay a heavy price. And I'm looking for President Trump to follow through with what I think was a good first step. But this is just a first step. If you don't do more, Putin's going to get emboldened. If you're aggressive, I think he begins to retreat because he is on the wrong side of what's happening in Syria. Most Syrians hold Russia accountable for this as much as they do Assad.
We'll see. We are going to seek in further clarity on where the red line stands right now, if it includes barrel bombs. We see where your position is on it. Senator, thanks always for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.